agency responsive and accountable to the people.
Amen.
Thank you. Awesome. So we have no Democrat on the ticket running for high bailiff in Rutland County. However, we do have someone who has agreed to let us write them in for the general. Liz is double checking as we speak whether or not I'm allowed to say their name right now. But if I'm not, you will hear about it in the future. My second question is, what is happening down in Mississippi and why should we care, Dave? I know you have to go, so.
We have a contract as a state with a private corporation that runs a prison in Mississippi. They run prisons for profit all over this country. We have about 220, roughly, Vermont prisoners in Mississippi. We pay them a lot of money. We pay them, a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars to house these folks. And it turns out that about 75% of them, a little less than 75%, more than 2/3, have now tested positive for COVID because this private corporation cares much more about profit than anything else. Just like we saw with nursing homes, and just like we fear we're going to see with college campuses, prisons are congregate living facilities, and once COVID gets in, it spreads and spreads. The Department of Corrections is a deeply messed up institution. It is culturally broken and deeply in need of fundamental reform. And when I say reform, I don't mean I mean re-dash form. You need to break it apart and put it back together. Just the lack of just moral responsibility that we take for the people that we imprison. Yes, they committed crimes. Yes, some of them are presently continue to be a danger to society if released, but they are still people and they need to be treated as people, and it is just negligent of the state to not impose its protocols that prevented widespread, spread of COVID in Vermont's prisons, in this Mississippi prison. And this is just, it makes me very, very sad.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. I just don't have my little screen in a square, so I wasn't sure. So you say we spend millions and millions of dollars on these in this private prison. When the question came up about,
and I suspect not through November, because they've announced this. They're trying it. They've already started to charge people. What I'm hoping for is, what I want to do is, quite frankly, after the election, I want to try and write a letter and get as many state and local officials to sign on to it, saying, because I also don't think the Herald's going to make a lot of money on this. I think people are going to look at this format, say this isn't worth it, and instead of having, if 8 people wrote letters to endorse me 2 years ago, I might have 1 letter in there this time. So it's not going to equate to, oh, we had 300 letters, we're going to get paid for 300 letters. We're going to have 10 letters. Right. So I think it's going to be a failure financially, and I think it's going to, definitely hurt public discourse. So what I'm hoping is, after the fact, we can write a letter and just get as many signees as possible and send it to the Herald, and publicize it, get it out on like BT Digger, and in effect try and shame the Herald for not being the voice of the community, and say, hey, you really hurt public discourse during an important election. Please change your policy. Let's get back to what it was in time for the local elections in March.
Could this possibly, can I say something? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
you. Okay. My little screen doesn't come squared up, so I don't ever know. Anyway, could this be something I keep reading about, the bigger and bigger newspaper chains buying up little town newspapers like this and basically drying them up? Could this be what's going on here?
I personally, I don't know. The Herald is, the Herald and the Times Argus are owned by a company that owns some other papers, but they're based out of Maine, New England. So they're not owned by it's not like the Burlington Free Press that is owned by a major conglomerate. So I don't know. I just think it's a company that's trying to make their money in niche markets with, relatively small papers, and they're trying to milk every possible dollar that they can.
Mm-hmm.
Really pathetic. It's just.
And, I want my local
Yeah.
reporters to get paid. I want to have this coverage, but they've really done damage to the community with their new policy. And there's just no way around that.
Right. Totally agree.
I don't know if Heather is back or if she's off.
Heather is not here.
But so, if we're done with that, Stephanie spoke. I'll just take a moment to speak briefly on my campaign. So it is, Stephanie, this is again, it's like Stephanie and I are in the same boat. We're finishing up our first term. So I don't want to speak for her, but I really don't know what normal is for a reelection, but I have a hunch it's not this. So, I ran for city, and what did the folks do? They left his meeting and they went and they spray painted things like "white is right" in public highway access areas. So he's bringing out the worst in some very terrible people to begin with. He's empowering them to act. And it will also be extremely helpful to Democrats who are running against Clark juniors. It'll be very helpful to point out, hey, you think what this guy is saying is terrible. Well, this person is committed to his cause and this person is committed to his cause, because it will really draw a contrast between the Democratic candidates and our opponents. And there are, quite frankly, plenty of, let's call them Phil Scott Republicans. There are plenty of Republicans who are put off by that, who would rather vote for a Democrat than vote for someone who's riding Clark's coattails. So the more word can be spread on that as well, to draw what is a clear contrast in this election, the better. So really for me, and I think for most of us who are running for re-election or who are Democrats trying to unseat, incumbent Republican, we're all reliant on people who support our causes, who share our beliefs, to just take whatever bit of information we can get out into media, into social media, and just amplify the heck out of it. That'll be the most helpful thing anyone can do this election. And Robin's district, it's one Republican for one spot. So there's not cases where it's a Clark Republican running against a Phil Scott Republican. It's just one person running. So it'll be curious to see